For today's video, I'm going to be doing a tour of my fish room. I try to do these updates once every 3 months to give an overview of how everything is moving forward. Before we start, I do want to quickly thank everyone who reached out on social media last month to check in on me. I'm completely fine, I just posted a lot less than usual on my Box Diaries brand. I'm not burnt out with the hobby or content creation or anything like that. I've been a full-time content creator since 2017 and one of my other brands makes around 70% of its income from the last week of October till the first week of December because of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, so that brand just needed a lot of my time over the last few weeks. But Box Diaries has earned more than the average full-time UK income for each of the past 4 months, so I am in the process of selling one of my other brands and I'm probably going to sell another one too, so from 2026 when those sales are completed, I'll be going full-time with my time and energy on Box Diaries. So getting into the video and starting with my 40-gallon community tank, and overall things are going really well. The plants are thriving and most of the livestock is doing great, and the new Corydoras plants that I added a few months back are fully settled in and converted to their aquatic form and grown very well. The vast majority of the green spot algae that was on the Anubias has also faded, so the tank is in a pretty good place right now. Unfortunately, I did lose both of my honey gourami and 2 of my Corydoras last month, all within a 2-week period. Even though I do keep a lot of filterless low water change tanks, this 40-gallon tank has always been filtered and always had at least 1 water change per month. Now I did recently change the filter from a Fluval FX2 to an All Pond Solutions HOB 500, but those fish passed away before the switch, so there's nothing to do with that. My honey gourami and Corydoras were some of the first fish that I purchased when I got back into the hobby, so they are some of my oldest fish, and I do think that it's just natural causes because since then I haven't lost any of the other fish in here, and my water parameter test kit says everything's clean, safe and stable. Honey gourami are my favourite fish, so I'll definitely be getting more in the future, but I am going to be using them in a dedicated honey gourami setup rather than putting them back in this 40-gallon tank, and I do think I'll get a pearl gourami to go into this setup. Moving on, and we get to my high-grade cherry shrimp breeding tank, which used to sit below my 40-gallon tank, but as you can see in this clip, unfortunately I did end up breaking it. This happened during the last heatwave we had during September when I was putting my tower fans out that I used to cool my racks. I didn't notice that the power cables had tangled, so when I moved the second one into position on my other rack, it pulled the tower fan in front of this setup and it collapsed into the tank. Thankfully, from what I could tell, only 2 of the cherry shrimp were actually washed out with the water that came out when the glass cracked, and the rest were at the back of the tank grazing on the Java moss. Because that tank was damaged beyond repair, I ended up just splitting the shrimp colony and putting them into other tanks. This is my new tank that's currently sitting below my 40-gallon tank, and it's a 25 litre or 6.6 US gallon setup, and I'll be moving it to one of my racks once I have space. For now, I'm just using this as a quarantine tank for 3 new Corydoras that I picked up to replace the 2 that I lost from my 40-gallon. These little Corys are absolutely adorable at this size, but they do grow fast, and as long as they show no signs of infection, they will be moved into the 40-gallon in probably another week or 2. After that, I am thinking of moving my Endler's live bearers into this tank just to give them more horizontal swimming space than their current setup, but I do want to add a shrimp colony to this too. Overall though, this tank is off to a pretty good start, and the cycle was flawless and the majority of plants are doing really well. The Marcellia crenata, which I'm trying to use as a carpeting plant in here, is yellowing and it might not make it, but from what I've seen this is a more challenging variety of Marcellia, and Marcellia hirsuta does seem to be far easier to grow. As you can see, the Rotala blood red in the back left of the tank is already starting to colour up, and this tank uses a budget-friendly entry-level Ciora SR616, showing that it is strong enough to get red hues out of the plant. Other than that though, there's really not that much to report with this tank because it's so new and still aging in. Moving on, and we get to my Walstad method Guppy tank, and everything is still going according to plan here, and I'm really happy with how this tank is progressing. The cherry shrimp colony is bouncing back nicely after I moved around half of them to other tanks and a lot of them were given away. The guppies are also doing well for the most part, with the 2 Endler guppies, which are the youngest fish in the tank, being more energetic than ever. The yellow-tailed guppy is starting to realise he's at an age where I just can't keep up with the energy levels of the two younger Endler guppies anymore, so he is starting to back down from challenges in favour of a quieter life. My blue guppy is the oldest one in here by far, and he's definitely starting to show the signs of age. He does have some white marks forming around his eyes, and I sent a photograph to one of my friends who keeps a lot of live bearers, and he says some of his older guppies get this too, but to his knowledge it's not infectious, so I haven't started any treatments. Plant-wise, everything is thriving, even though some sources claim that Walstad tanks start running into issues after the first year. I can't remember if the Cryptocoryne Beckettii petchii was already in this tank during my last fish room update, but that's settling in the mid-ground just to add some unique colours and textures to the left and right. The Christmas moss, Rotala rotundifolia and Bacopa caroliniana are all doing really well, and I'm really happy with their progress. The duckweed is also doing fine in this, but I am thinking of removing it from the tank because its small size compared with my not so great eyesight do make it a pain to prevent it spreading into other tanks. I've lost count of how many of the tiny little plantlets I've accidentally missed on my plant trimming tools, and now I've ended up with duckweed and several other setups. Rather than getting a separate set of trimming tools that I only use in this tank, I'd rather just remove the duckweed, and then I'll probably add something like Spirodella or maybe Salvinia to this instead. Moving on, and we get to my Walstad method Pearlweed jungle tank, and the Pearlweed in here is absolutely thriving, and the Bloody Mary shrimp in here are breeding like crazy, even though this tank is a room temperature setup and it's currently December, so the water temperature is around 18 degrees Celsius or around 64 degrees Fahrenheit. I know the tank is looking overgrown right now, but that is semi-intentional. That's because I've decided to move the Medaka ricefish out of this tank into one of my newer Medaka ricefish setups, which I'll talk about later in the video. Once the Medaka are moved over to there, I can let the Pearlweed take over this completely, increasing the grazing surfaces to boost the natural feeding area for the shrimp so the Bloody Mary colony can get even larger. That's because I'm thinking about removing a lot of Bloody Mary shrimp from this tank and moving them over to the one I'm currently using as a quarantine tank for my Corydoras that I showed earlier, as well as a shrimp bowl that I'll show later in the video. Moving on, and we get to my Medaka Walstad method tank, which I set up to try and demonstrate how I personally think anyone new to the hobby building their very first Walstad method tank should set one up to maximise their chances of success. Just to clarify though, I'm a huge fan of Medaka ricefish and keep them in several tanks, and this isn't the tank that I'm considering moving the Medaka from the Pearlweed jungle tank to. Now this is one of my youngest filterless Walstad method tanks, but it's been pretty flawless from the start if I'm honest. There's been no wobbles or problems with water parameters or the health of the fish or shrimp or anything like that. This one does have my Skittles Neocaridina shrimp colony, and by the word Skittles I mean that there's red, orange, yellow and blue Neocaridina shrimp in this tank. That is part of an experiment that I decided to run to see what colour the babies would be if I just let everything crossbreed with each other. There's at least 4 generations of Neocaridina shrimp in here now, and at least 1 pregnant female carrying eggs, but most of the young shrimp seem to be carrying the red colour, and the rest are either a very pale yellow or wild types. The 3 Platinum Medaka in here are also doing really well, but I'm probably going to keep them in this tank rather than move these 3 over to my new Medaka setup. Keeping the fish in here just makes it easier to document the performance of the tank for its first year, giving people who are new to the hobby more confidence that this type of setup will work. One thing I do want to mention is that the Helenthium telenum green carpet isn't doing anywhere near as well as I'd expect. The tank is running an entry-level affordable Ciora SR616 light, but the floating plants have been the priority for the first few months of the setup because they help to reduce the risk by absorbing a lot of the toxins in a new tank. The downside of that is the floating plants do block out a lot of the light that could be getting through to the carpet, so I do think I will be removing the floating plants from this tank so the carpet can have a chance to thrive. The vast majority of the water-soluble nutrients from the topsoil in this tank's substrate should have dissipated by now and been used up by the plants, so there shouldn't be any risk to it, but I will be checking the water parameters on a regular basis once I remove all of the floating plants. Before I move on to the next tank, I do want to quickly touch on the racking systems that I've already shown because it's a really inefficient use of space right now and I do want to improve it in the future. I was recently watching a Fish Talk live stream and I mentioned in the chat that I'm considering replacing those racks that I've already covered in the video with a 3 meter long setup that'll be 3 shelves high. Then Lois Aqua Design mentioned that she uses a 4 meter long setup in her own fish room. That really got me thinking of what I could do with this setup. As I said back at the start of the video, the Box Diaries brand is doing really well, and if it keeps growing at this pace, then I'm seriously considering redoing this entire section of the fish room and upgrading to a 3 or even 4 meter long rack that'll be 3 shelves high. Because that would need me to move a few things around, it would also end up freeing up even more space, so I could fit even more racks on the left hand side of the room once everything's moved around. Right now I am leaning more towards using 54 litre or 14 US gallon tanks on those racks if I do end up building them, because they seem to be a great all round size for plants, shrimp and fish. Anyway, getting back to the video, and we get to my self-cleaning aquarium where the plants, shrimp, snails and microorganisms handle the vast majority of the tank maintenance where possible. I don't want to go into too much detail in this video because the next video on my channel will be the monthly update for this tank and it's going really well. I did recently add some slow grown aquaponically kept houseplants to the back rim of the tank to try and fill out that area of the rack, but I am wondering how they'll perform over the winter with the ambient temperatures in this room. The celestial pearl danios are definitely breeding in here too, and there's definitely smaller fish in here which are far too small to have came over when I moved them from their old tank into this one. Like I mentioned with the Walstad Medaka tank, I am thinking of removing all of the floating plants from this setup to give the Helenthium telenum green carpet more light and give it a chance to fill out quicker. Next up is my Ember Tetra and Pygmy Corydoras tank, and I'm hoping to get the build video for this tank online this coming month. Right now I'm very happy with how this particular tank is performing and aging in, but it was a very problematic tank for the first few months and it had a lot of problems with a bunch of different types of algae. I also think that adding the sand bed for the Pygmy Corydoras to foraging was a mistake with this exact setup because aqua soil keeps getting knocked onto the sand. Unfortunately, unlike some sand products on the market, this one holds a static charge, so the magnet trick to quickly and easily get the aqua soil off it doesn't work. But it's definitely been a learning experience and something I'll take on board for future tanks, and I'll probably have a hardscape barrier between the aqua soil and sand in future tanks like this one. Right now, I'm running the light on this setup at 25% intensity to help battle against all the algae blooms that I had it, and things are starting to go my way. This tank uses a Ciora SR659, which I'm running at 25% intensity because it's way more powerful than I initially thought, but it is helping me beat the algae back. As you can see, the Ulthananthera renekii mini hasn't melted with the drastic reduction in light, but it has slightly dropped its red hues and went to this orange colour. Next up is my Walstad method Endler Guppy tank, and honestly very little's changed with this setup. Everything seems to be going fine overall, but the white Neocaridina shrimp in here don't appear to be breeding. I've definitely seen one female in here carrying eggs a few months back, but I'm guessing that something stressed her out to cause her to drop the eggs. Since then I haven't seen another buried female carrying eggs, so I'm not sure if the male in the tank may have passed away or if the female I did see carrying eggs was already fertilised before being shipped to me. I don't like ordering shrimp during the winter months, and while there's a good chance they will be fine in the shipping system, I'm probably going to wait until spring or try and find more white Neocaridina shrimp locally to try and get a male into this tank. The Endler guppies themselves are doing well, but like I mentioned earlier, once the Corydoras are out of the tank I'm quarantining them in, these Endlers will probably be moved over to that tank just to give them a wider horizontal footprint for swimming. On the flip side of that though, the Endlers really don't seem bothered by being in a cube-shaped tank, and they are constantly active just like my Endler guppies in my other tank and just doing Endler things 90% of the time. So again, I flip-flop on this one, but I am leaning more towards moving them to the new tank. Moving on, and we get to my filterless Walstad method cherry shrimp tank, and this one doesn't have any fish in it at all. It is literally just a cherry shrimp breeding colony. There's a couple of generations of baby shrimp in here now, and they do seem to be grazing on the algae and biofilm that grow on the stem plants in the back and the Marcellia hirsuta carpet in the front. I have tried to make this Walstad setup more aesthetically pleasing and aquascape it a little bit more, but because it is a filterless setup, we still need a lot of fast grown stem plants to naturally purify the water, so they do still take up a lot of space. At this point though, I've set up enough capped dirt Walstad method tanks that I know what to expect on the timeline, and while I did have some issues with algae early on because this is using a very powerful light, since I've turned that light down a lot, everything's going to plan. I do sometimes think this tank might look better with a few small nanofish in it, and I have came close to picking some up multiple times, but every time I've swung back to just keeping it as a cherry shrimp breeding tank, at least for now. Moving on, and we get to my filterless jungle betta fish tank. If you're familiar with my channel, you may know that Marmalade the betta fish is extremely keen on her food, and it's very rare she misses her meal or the shrimp's meal if she gets a chance to steal their food. But we did recently have a 3 or 4 day period where she barely ate anything, which is not normal for her. I was worried that it might be the dropsy returning that she overcame a few months back, but there hasn't been any real symptoms of the dropsy starting to swell up on her or anything like that. And then yesterday and today she's back to normal, eating all of her food and racing around the tank, so I'm really not sure what happened. I do have all of my meds on standby in case she starts to swell up, but right now she's back to acting normally, so I'm not planning to dose any medication to the tank just because I don't like dosing unless there's definitely something wrong with the fish. Moving away from my betta fish, and the plants in here are absolutely thriving. The Neocaridina shrimp colonies had another batch of babies in here, and the ram's horn snails are doing well too. This tank is coming up to 1 year old in early February, so once that happens I will get the 1 year update video online to document how everything's been for the tank. Next up is my golden white cloud mountain minnow tank, which is a room temperature tank. I am really curious to see how this one performs over the coming winter because it made it through last winter without any real issues, but there's far more plant mass in this setup this year, so dormancy or plant hibernation may result in holes forming in some of the plant's leaves as the plants shut down for the colder weather. This setup does have a filter, so the microorganisms on the media will still handle a lot of the filtration rather than the plants. In a week or two I will be switching my white clouds to a temperate food formula with low protein levels, just so they produce low levels of ammonia during the colder months when the plants and microorganisms slow down. This just helps keep everything as safe as possible until the spring comes round and everything starts to warm up again. The white clouds in here have been breeding a lot recently, but again, as usual, I do think the ram's horn snail population in this tank eat a lot of the white cloud eggs before they have a chance to hatch. After removing hundreds of ram's horn snails from this tank a few months back, I did notice at least one batch of Neocaridina shrimp babies have been born in this tank too, but with the colder months coming around, the breeding rate will naturally slow down. If I do move ahead with the rack upgrades I mentioned earlier next year, I do want to move my golden white clouds into a larger tank just to give them more swim space, but I will probably keep this setup as it is because I do like the look of it, and I'd probably put another species in here, probably Medaka or something like that. Speaking of Medaka, next up we have my new aquatic garden tank, which is going to keep various Medaka lines in it. As much as I love filterless Walstad or ecosystem style tanks, they can be pretty restrictive when it comes to the plant choices you can keep because you need a lot of the space available for fast grown stem or stolen plants for natural water purification. Aquatic plants are a massive part of the hobby for me, so I do think I'm going to be building more tanks like this where they are filtered and the focus is on different types of slow grown plant, just to let me experiment with those and see how they perform, and then use a filter on the tank for microorganisms to deal with the filtration. I know the background of this tank does still look a little rough, but that's because I recently replanted the back left and back middle with more Blixa japonica. After seeing how well Blixa did in the back right of this tank, I wanted more of it in here for a more cohesive layout across the background. With any luck, it will all grow into the same height over the next month or two and have a more uniformed background. Right now there's two new Kohaku Medaka in here which have a platinum body with an orange head. I picked these guys up the same time I picked up the Corydoras, so this is a pseudo quarantine tank right now. In a week or two I might start moving more Medaka over to this tank, or I might just buy more from my local shop because I want a bunch of different lines with a lot of different colour in here. There aren't any shrimp in here yet because Somerset Shrimp has a new prismatic blue and red line of Neocaridina that I really want, but like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of ordering shrimp during the winter, even though I do think they'll be fine. I might wait until the spring before I add shrimp to this tank. On the flip side of that though, one of my local aquatic shops, Gateshead Guppies, has a ton of shrimp in right now, and they've got green rilly shrimp and blue carbon rillies as well at pretty decent prices, at least for my area. So I might pick some of those up locally just to get some shrimp in here and then order more online for other tanks in the spring. I do want to quickly touch on my jars and bowls just to offer an update on everything, but maintenance day is today for these, so they might look a little rough in the video footage. First up, I just want to say there's no shrimp in this first jar. It's literally a quarantine jar for some guppy grass that I picked up on Etsy because I did suspect there'd be duckweed mixed in it, and as you can see, I was right to do so. I know guppy grass is very common over in North America and a lot of people keep it, but it's native over there. It is an imported plant here and it's not very easy to find, so I could only get it from someone on Etsy who managed to get it into the country. My pearlweed shrimp jar is doing fine, but I have been removing some of the shrimp from this recently. I have also had some questions on why I let the pearlweed grow so densely in this shrimp jar. There's no fish in here, it's just shrimp, and they care more about grazing space for feeding rather than swim space. So the more I let the pearlweed grow in with this jar, the more grazing space there is for algae and biofilm, so the shrimp get more food, in turn their babies get more food, so it just helps scale up the colony faster. That said, I do know the jar looks wild right now. We are into the winter months and this is unheated, so the breeding rate will slow right down, so I am probably going to trim this down to around the halfway mark soon. Then we have my new shrimp bowl, which will probably get some Bloody Mary shrimp added to it this coming week. The water parameters for this shrimp bowl have been safe and stable for weeks, but like I mentioned earlier in the video, November is the busiest month of the year for me by far due to my job. Because I knew I'd be working so much, I did delay adding any shrimp to this bowl, even though I'm confident they'd be perfectly fine, just because I do like to pay a lot more attention to adding shrimp to a new setup because they are generally more sensitive than fish. Now that Black Friday and Cyber Monday are over, work is going back to normal, so I can get some shrimp in here and give them the normal care and attention I would when adding shrimp to a new setup. One thing I would say is that I honestly think this Sansi 20-watt grow light is too powerful for this bowl, but once the shrimp are in here, I'll reanalyze it to see if they can keep the algae under control with the amount of algae they'll eat. I did recently get some 10-watt Sansi puck lights for one of my racks for the emergent plants, and I do think getting some more of them will be a far better fit for these little bowls. Now, I'm not 100% sure how long I'm going to keep these shrimp jars going for because I just prefer bowls. They are larger, which means I can keep more shrimp in there and add more plants and do more things with them. I already have a second shrimp bowl ready to set up, and I'm probably going to get a third one, but my current thinking is to just wait until the spring months come around because it makes things so much easier when things are warmer when it comes to the initial cycle of a heaterless and filterless setup. On the off chance you're wondering what shrimp bowls I'm using, these are just the Amtra shrimp bowls. I got them on Amazon here in the United Kingdom. I know some people on mainland Europe who use them too, but Amtra is a German brand, so I'm not sure if you can find these exact ones outside of Europe because some of the other brands of shrimp bowl I've tried have been terrible compared to these. Anyway guys, that brings the video to an end. I hope it's been helpful. Thanks for watching and good luck with your aquariums.